Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're taking a look at This Is the Police 2, a game in which you manage the police in a small town while following along a character-driven story and occasionally getting involved in tactical operations. Developed by WeAP Studios, this indie game is published by THQ Nordic, releases on the 2nd of August, and it adds on to the first game in the series without relying on it to introduce new players. The game will release on Windows PC, Mac, Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch, and I'm playing the Windows version for this review. A quick mention, for full disclosure, that I did receive a review copy of the game, but as many of you will have seen in my previous reviews, that really doesn't change my opinion at all. If you decide you'd like to get the game, consider using the Humble Bundle affiliate link I've provided down below and under the eye at the top right corner of this screen, as doing so supports charity and this channel. A quick word of warning to those of you who appreciate the typically clean nature of this channel: this game has a fair bit of swearing and some pretty crude humor and themes. It is, after all, about cops. The first thing to concern ourselves with in This Is the Police 2 is the narrative. The game is driven by the story of the protagonist of the first game, a cop turned somewhat crooked, depending on who you ask, doing some sketchy things, depending on who you ask, and ultimately getting mixed up and chased down by the feds. You find yourself further embroiled in police shenanigans when you're found by local police at your hideout town of Sharpwood, living at a stash house for the local drug peddling gang. This gang is also responsible for killing the town sheriff, creating a vacuum that is currently being filled by a somewhat incompetent shit cop. In order to get out of being arrested and then further being sent to the feds, you make a deal with the aforementioned shit cop sheriff that you'll help her manage the station, and in return, she won't turn you in.
Oh, they just didn't bother.
With the visual style of the game being so minimal, using an illustrated approach, the story is told using a graphic novel-esque approach. We get panels and stills with little motion, and we get some absolutely fantastic voice acting and writing. John St. John, the voice behind Duke Nukem, and the protagonist here, Jack Boyd, does a phenomenal job, and everybody else is more or less on par.
You know why, Warren? Because... Oh, I'm sorry, Warren. I'll be just a second, all right?
Shit, Charlie! What the hell? Do you want...
Corey, just look for the fucking drugs while I'm busy with the fucking suspect, okay? So, Warren, filthy things like you drive me nuts. 'Cause you think that we'll never catch up with you. You think the police can't do anything. You think we just rescue cats.
There is actual tension in the voices, there is emotion, there is feeling and depth, and of course, a lot of credit needs to be given to the writers as well, who have penned a great script. The opening sequence where the cops are talking about taking down the drawing on the wall, which is actually a tapestry put up by the now dead sheriff, is such a great scene where you immediately understand all the characters, what type of police station this is, and who is more smarmy than others.
Whoa. First, it's not a drawing, it's a tapestry, okay? A beautiful work of art. You didn't notice, did you? Second, it's hanging there for a reason. And third, and most important,
Oh, you mean that drawing in the hall? Great. I'll get a hanger tomorrow so we can put the TV up there. Maybe
With
a
that said,
VCR,
some of these cutscenes drag on for far too long, especially the introductory one. I think it might have actually been 30 minutes long, with some very minimal interaction here and there, but not since the days of Metal Gear Solid 4 have I sat and watched a movie between snippets of gameplay. Another issue I had with the storytelling was the lack of commitment. While some sections were told through this minimal panel and graphic art style approach, others were told through the same art style, but fully animated and lip-synced. It felt like a strange decision and made me wonder why everything wasn't fully animated, at which point it starts feeling like budget constraints rather than stylization. There isn't much in the realm of character customization. You answer some questions about your past through yourself or through other characters talking about you to the feds, and this helps build the tone of your character rather than the backstory or anything like that. It is a pre-written character, and that's fine, of course. Not every game needs character customization, and I found the letter writing sequence at the opening and the Q&A sessions a nice way to portray who you're playing and of introducing new players to the character's past. When you finally get to playing the game proper, the visual style comes to life in the representation of the town, and in how all the dispatch calls come in and how situations are handled. There's a nice deal of harmony here, and I find that very important when a game goes for the stylized approach. Everything looks intentional and it looks good. We aren't supposed to expect photorealism here, and so it's important to ensure that there is a consistent aesthetic. When it comes to aesthetic, Audio is a big part of the audio-visual experience, and to be perfectly honest, the music and sound design in this game is fantastic. You want to talk about immersion? The music in this game puts you right on a table, hunched over, drinking an Irish coffee that's probably more whiskey than it is coffee, and you're trying to figure out if life's worth living and if you're going to be able to retire anytime soon. And then, when you're actually on the field leading a tactical operation, the music is fittingly ominous, as at any moment everything could go sideways and you could lose some good cops. And things are prone to go sideways, not just on the field, but back at HQ as well. The game is set up for you to start digging into some nefarious affairs to make ends meet. The man keeping you on the down low back at home starts asking for money, and you need to make that money to keep him quiet. So you start going down the path of corruption, doing favors for anything from money to indoor plumbing for your officers to cleaning services. Some of these choices will make your cops happy, others will keep you safe from the feds. So how does one actually go about playing the game? Well, there's a lot to it. You're going to spend most of your time managing the station. That means picking which cops are coming in the next day, dealing with potential excuses or requests for time off, assigning equipment to the cops that decide to show up, and then you get to get in the role of dispatch. You'll get calls across the city for various crimes. You need to respond to these calls in time by selecting them and assigning cops to go on the call. There is a minimum professionalism level that the cops must add up to before you can actually send them out, and some cops will refuse to work with others, while others still will simply refuse to go without backup, or just refuse to go under any circumstances. With multiple calls popping up at a time, you'll need to manage the overall professionalism of the force well, or you'll find yourself having to ignore calls, sometimes to dire consequences. When cops finally arrive at the scene of a crime, you'll either get told it was a false alarm, or you'll have to help them make decisions about how to handle the situation based on what equipment they have, what skills they have, and what the situation is. Doing well increases the professionalism of those involved, while doing poorly decreases it. As these officers level up, you spec them, unlocking additional traits and perks that they can use in a tactical scenario. Apart from regular calls, you'll also get the chance to partake in investigations. These are long-term issues where you have to send officers, preferably with high intelligence, to look into a crime scene. They'll gather clues that you can read, and story fragments that you will need to put together in accordance with the clues to indict the suspect, arrest said suspect, and either send them to court or keep them for interrogation. You also play the role of interrogator when and if the time comes, and then there are the tactical missions that pop up every so often. You can respond to them at any time during the day, so make sure you have plenty of cops present at the station when you want to send a group over. Dealing with a bomb threat with 11 suspects using 2 cops is not a good idea. Trust me, I've tried. This tactical layer of the game has you asking nearby witnesses questions, trading confiscated or gifted goods for intel, and it certainly takes notes from games like XCOM. You have move and action points, you can dash extra distance, you've got various abilities, and your equipment that you assigned at the start of the day comes in handy here as well. Where things really differ from other titles in this genre is the importance of stealth. You'll want to spend more, if not all of your time sneaking around, jimmying windows, picking locks, and smacking perps with batons or zapping them with tasers to arrest them quietly. This allows you to keep the element of surprise. The moment a gunshot is heard, unless you've got the specific perk for it on your officer who fired, all the suspects are rightfully alerted, and boy oh boy do they hate the pigs. The tactical layer also brings an interesting element in the loyalty of your cops. Some cops think they're too good to be bossed around, and they will move and act as pleased. As you can see here, one of my cops decides to open fire within seconds of the assignment, and that puts me on the back foot. I should have escaped, but I ended up losing 2 good cops. And the best part? I was actually upset. I had honed these 2 ladies. They were partners. They'd gone on every call together, just the 2 of them. And now, because of hubris, they died together. Even though the game allows you to try again, there was no point here, though it does make me wonder why there's no Iron Man mode, or something similar. It would add more gravitas to these situations. Ultimately, I had to plan their funerals as well, and while the good loyal cop got a decent funeral that I paid for out of my own pocket, the garbage cop that decided not to listen to orders and broke the rules of engagement didn't really get much of a send-off. Now, the management elements get particularly interesting when dealing with personalities. These cops are people with feelings and opinions. Some refuse to come in daily, some are often no-shows, others refuse to go out on a call with women because he has enough lady problems at home, and some refuse to go out with men because the women can handle it. You have to manage these issues alongside the demand for a certain level of professionalism from the calls, and if your staff is tired or drunk or disloyal, they might hurt themselves in a car crash, or ignore orders or refuse to go out, as I mentioned earlier. Some of these things can take them out of the office for multiple days. Where things start to get frustrating is when you are simply unable to respond to all calls because of clashing personalities, and that results in an endless cycle. It sets up a loop. You need to do well to hire more cops, so you can do better, but you need more cops to do better. While it's fine for the most part, it can get annoying when somebody is a no-call, no-show for the third day in a row, or shows up drunk every day and refuses to go out on calls. You feel like your hands are handcuffed behind your back at times, and you might as well let the town eat itself alive. A big miss here is the lack of replayability as well. The game's story is, of course, a linear narrative, and that's fine. However, the dispatch calls you get are always the same across the same days, at least the first few times that I replayed to test for replayability. You're only allowed one save, and you play that from start to finish, and then you're done. Outside of hiring different cops or responding to calls with different choices or asking different questions here and there doesn't seem to be a reason to go back to the game over and over, especially in that first third. And that's just a shame, because a game like this would be greatly helped by having some randomly generated calls and investigations and tactical missions. And on that note, I also felt that there weren't enough of the tactical missions happening. That is clearly my personal bias though, as strategy is my favorite genre and I just wanted more of it. It'll be very different for everybody else who perhaps prefers the management aspect over the tactical side of things. All in all, This Is the Police 2 provides a great narrative-driven game where the challenges come in the form of organizational skills before they come in the form of tactical thinking. Dealing with the staff can get outrageously frustrating at times, but the game has a great deal of variety that keeps things interesting. It almost feels like 4 different games blended into one, and it does a good job of it. None of it feels like a mishmash or like a poorly executed opportunity. The voice acting and music, as I've said before, are absolutely phenomenal, and they are a great driving force for the game as well, and the art style and narrative style fit the noir-ish story quite well. It gives me some Max Payne vibes, albeit visually much lighter, and I guess you don't find your wife dead within the first few minutes of the game. While I wish for a greater presence of the tactical elements, I think the game kept me quite entertained, and it kept me curious to see how the story progressed, even though I never got a chance to play the first one in the series. As many of you know, I avoid numerical scores, as they are completely arbitrary and result in senseless comparisons. I had fun with the game, and unless the management genre doesn't interest you, I think you're likely to enjoy it too. I just wish there was more of a replayability factor. This might actually be my first review where I'm more positive than not, so take that how you will as well. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date with strategy and tactical games. There are plenty of really great ones right around the corner, and I intend to keep my eye on as many as possible. A massive thanks to all of my patrons who keep the channel alive and running smoothly on a month-to-month basis, and thank you all for watching as well. Till next time, cheers.